For the past 10 years, I've helped hundreds of brands navigate Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Brands like Dr Squatch, Oksha, Glannetic, and Amika. And this video is our complete playbook for doing conversion optimization before, during, and after Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So first, though, here's a question for you. Do you know how much money you left on the table last Black Friday? And not from the people who didn't buy, but from the people who did buy. People that potentially would have spent more with a different offer structure or would have bought at a higher margin with better offer mechanics. Because here's what kills me. Brands forget they can do conversion optimization specifically to maximize BFCM performance. And that means that they might be ignoring millions of dollars in profit. So today, I'm walking you through the exact testing and optimization framework we use at SplitBase for BFCM. Now, this isn't theory. This is what we do with brands doing 10 million, 50 million, and 100 million plus in revenue. And I'll mostly cover three phases. First one is what to test right now in September and October. I'm talking specific tests, specific metrics to look for, and specific segments. Phase 2 is going to be what happens during Black Friday itself. And spoiler, you test almost nothing, but I'll explain exactly why. And then phase 3 is really the gold mine that everyone ignores, which is post Black Friday testing and optimization that can set you up for massive Q1 revenue. Now, just a quick reality check. Most brands are dealing with margin pressure right now, right? Costs are up, competition is fierce, and customers just always expect bigger and bigger discounts, which also means that it's hard to just copy what you did last year. You need to be smarter, you need to be more strategic, more surgical. And the difference, I would say, between brands that crush Black Friday and brands that just survive it is that, the winners are starting to test now or have already started testing for Black Friday, Cyber Monday in September and October, not just during. Now, the losers are still debating their discount percentage on Thanksgiving. So maybe take some notes and let's make this your most profitable Black Friday ever. So let's dive right in. All right, so now let's answer the question of what should you test before Black Friday, Cyber Monday to make sure that you're 100% ready. Well, let's look at this chart here on my screen. So the first test is discount depth testing. And this is really where everyone should start. You're validating what actually drives behaviors when it comes to discount. You're not guessing, because here's the deal, right? What happens is most teams just look at what they did last year when it comes to a sale, and they're guessing. Should we do 25%? Should we do 30%? Well, instead of guessing, right, don't leave profitability and conversions up to chance. Test it. So here's what you can do. What you can do is you can start first with what you would have gone when it comes to your sale, right? So maybe it was the last discount percentage you used last year. Maybe it's something else. So let's say you start with 25%. Now, what you're going to do is your control is going to be 25%, but you're going to create a variant where your discount is about 5% lower. All right. So that means in this case, we're going to have a 20% discount, and then we're going to have a second variant where the discount is going to be 5% higher. Now, here's what's going to happen. Once you start running this test, and you're going to want to leave this test on for a week or at least 2 weeks, right, ideally. And let's say we look at this example scenario. Here's what happens when we run it at 25%. And obviously, this is just an example. Your numbers would likely be entirely different. But here, maybe you get, at a 25% off, a conversion rate of 3.5%. All in, that gives you a profit per visitor of 0.53 cents. Now, let's look at variant 1 at 20% off, right? At 20% off, well, you get a much lower conversion rate than 25, which leads to an almost similar but lower profit per visitor, so 0.5 0.5. So 50 cents profit per visitor. Now, when we look at variant 2 at 30% off, well, here's what happens. Maybe you get 4.2% conversion rate, but then you look at your profit per visitor, and then you ended up only getting about 42 cents. Now, this is exactly why it's so important to test and look beyond conversion rate. Because if you're doing conversion optimization, and you're only looking at conversion rate, you would have gone with variant 2 at 42% off. But, it's a no-brainer. Higher discount percentage, higher conversion rate. But at the end of the day, what really matters and what shows up on your balance sheet isn't a conversion rate. It's your profit and your revenue. So yes, variant 2 here even would have given you more revenue. But because of the higher discount, your profit per visitor would have been about 11 cents less than in control. That does make a huge difference at the end of the day when it comes to your profit on your balance sheet. So the winner here was actually potentially what you did last year at 25% off. And this is why it's so important. So that's really, I would say, test number 1. It is the most basic. Now, obviously, you have to run this during a sales period. Otherwise, you can't really test it otherwise. So now test number 2, we're going to do something very similar, but we're going to test discount versus gift. Okay. So here's how you're going to set this up. The first test is your control, I should say, should be what you would have expected to set. So let's say it's 25% off. That's what won last time in the previous test when you did some discount depth testing. And you're still going to measure here your profit per visitor, by the way. But here's what you could do is variant 1, instead of giving a higher or lower threshold or discount, you would give a gift card. So in this case, maybe it's a 25% or $25, discount with their purchase. And variant 2 could be a free gift worth more than the discount, right? So free gift worth $35 that maybe costs you $5. So you can run this test, and ultimately, again, you'll want to measure your profit per visitor. Now, something key here is you're going to have to know or find out what is your gift card redemption rate. Industry average is about 80%, so I use that for our simulation here. But let's say we look at this simulation, right? We look at control at 25% off. Ultimately, if we just, give 25% off, we got a conversion rate of 3.5% with a profit per visitor of about 53 cents. Now, what if we look at the variant 1? Well, we got a slightly lower conversion rate than control. However, right, because of the value of the gift card, the cost of the gift card based on an 80% average redemption, well, it actually gives us a much higher profit per visitor. So here, maybe the gift card would have been a better option than just a blanket 25%. But now let's say we do a gift with purchase and we give a gift that's worth $35. Well, the conversion rate here may be still a bit lower than the discount or the percentage off. But when we look at how much it costs to give that gift, and this is a good thing to test if you have excess inventory you have to get rid of. If you just really have to move some inventory, this could be a good way of doing it. But here, our profit per visitor ended up being, more than double what was control. So $1.19. So in this case, variant 2 is just really a clear winner. And the reality is, if you did not test it, you probably just would have gone with what everybody does, which is, hey, let's do 25% off, 30% off, right? But in this case, on your balance sheet, right, variant 2 is going to look a lot better. It's going to give you a lot more cash to reinvest in inventory in order to grow. So variant 2 is a clear winner. This, again, is why you want to optimize for profit per visitor and not conversion rate. Because look at this, right? The 25% off still sort of has a higher conversion rate than variant 2 and variant 1, but variant 1 and 2 both would have been better options than your control. So that ultimately is, a slight variant to discount depth testing, but with some gifts, a gift card or another type of gift. Now, another test you can do is your tiered offers test. So this one is slightly different, right? So in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to want to look at your current AOV, and then you're going to create 3 tiers. So it's going to be, for example, in this case, $100, so just above or at your current AOV. And then the reward is they unlock free shipping. Then option number 2 is then you just want to make it higher than your AOV, so maybe $150, and the reward is free shipping plus 10% off. And then maybe the third tier is $200, so twice your current AOV, but then they get free shipping and 20% off. And the whole hypothesis of this test is that this can increase AOV. We're providing motivation for people to add more to their cart. So this could be your control. Now, variant 1 is, let's say, what if we want to test it? Is it better to give a discount-based tier? Is it better to create a gift-based tier? So for example here, $100 would give you free shipping, $150 would give you a free sample pack, and maybe $200 would give you a full-size gift, which again here, this could be a nice way to move some inventory over. And the third variant here could be, for example, a mix, right? So maybe $100 gets you free shipping, $150 is a gift card, and $200 is a percentage off. Now, the principles here are the same as the previous test, meaning that the calculations are going to be a little more complicated because what you want to do is you'll want to calculate, for example, the cost of the sample, the cost of the gift, the cost of the gift card, then in this case, you want to factor in your redemption rate as well, and then the cost of giving 25% off. But same principles apply. And by the way, if you want to get this FigJam document where you can actually look at all the calculations properly, and see all the types of tests that you can do before and during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, just make sure to click the link in the description below, and you'll be able to just download it and instantly access it. So that's something you can do right away or after this video. Now, in this case, right, let's say we have this hybrid tiered approach. Well, the hybrid tiered approach actually converted best at 3.3%. The variant 1, which is gift-based tiers, 2.9%, and then control, where you just flat out give a discount, was very close at 3.2. Again, now what's interesting here is you probably want to go with your highest profit per visitor. In this case, variant 1 and control both have the highest profit per visitor. Now, what do you do in this case if you have a tie in those cases where one is, let's say control is a 3.2% conversion rate, variant has a 2.9% conversion rate, and your profit per visitor is the same? In this case, go with which option gave you the most amount of customers, because I'm always thinking from a lifetime value perspective, right? Which one will give you the most amount of customers that you will eventually be able to remarket to and ideally extend their lifetime value? In this case, that would be control. Now, you could still push this a little further. So let's say you already have a lot of good LTV data from your samples and from your full gifts, right? Maybe you've seen that samples, people who receive samples, get a much higher LTV over time, to have a much higher returning customer rate, and maybe it's the same with the full-size gift. In that case, well, maybe you would want to do the comparison and you would want to go with variant 1, because ultimately what they will get will eventually get them to come back, versus maybe if you're just offering a discount. So this is where the math gets a bit more complicated, but look at your LTV and make the right decision for your brand. Now, what you want to be careful with as well in this scenario, right, is obviously when you're offering these tiers, make sure that those tiers make sense based on the products that you sell on your website, right? So here we went 100, 150, and 200, but if the average price of your product is a lot lower or is a lot higher, right, maybe you want to adjust those tiers. Another thing that you'll want to look for is what's the distribution? How many people reach tier 1 versus how many people reach tier 3, right? If you notice that, hey, everybody hits tier 1, but only like 3% here hit tier 3, well, maybe in this case, you will want to reduce tier 3 so you have more people hitting it, right? It's pointless in this case if no one really manages to achieve the other tiers or milestones. So that's another test that you can run. Now, we can go a little more complicated as well before we go a bit more simple. But you can also do what we call a segmented offer test. Now, the hypothesis of this approach is that it may not take as big of a discount to convert existing customers as it may take to convert new customers, right? Because what happens is when you do just a blanket 25% for your entire website, well, you're giving 25% to people that maybe would have converted as well at 15%. And then maybe you've got some people that just need a bit of an extra nudge, an extra amount of motivation. And those are the people where you need to give 25 or 30%, right? But if you give 25 or 30% to everyone, you're kind of ignoring those behaviors. Now, before you do this, however, this is a bit more complex, and this can be done with tools like Intelligence, and you can use UTMs, traffic sources, and cookies in order to have the right targeting. But you'll want to run a discount depth test before this, right? So here, discount depth and even discount versus gift are likely the first tests you want to start with before making things a bit more complicated and going into this. But what you can do essentially with this approach is with all your traffic, you'll just want to create some segments. So for example, control is where you give 25% off, for example, to everyone. And then in variant 1, and maybe this is best here to start with just a few segments versus all possible segments. Start with your biggest ones. But what you could do, for example, is, okay, well, first-time visitors get 20% off. Returning visitors that haven't bought, get 25, just for that extra level of motivation. And existing customers, so maybe people on your email list, they get early access, but that early access gives them 15% off instead, right? So here, this may actually help you protect your margins a bit more than if you give 25% to everyone. So now let's say we actually run this scenario, right? Well, here you're going to see a different conversion rate for each of your segments. So maybe in control, first-time visitor converts at 2.5%, returning customers or visitors convert at 3%, and existing customers at 4.5%, right? If you calculate your gross profit and your margin and all of that, at the end of the day, you may get a profit per visitor total of 64 cents versus the different segments, right? Again, you're not really looking at conversion rates. You're mostly looking at your profit per visitor. Here, maybe you'll realize that, hey, actually, we have a much higher profit per visitor. And in this case, this segmented approach would be something to prioritize over the other. Because maybe in this case, for example, right, you got the same conversion rate with your existing customers and you got with a 25% off, than you got when you're giving them early access and 15% off. So this obviously means you get more profit in your segmented approach than the blanketed approach. So this is why this is good to test. But again, run a discount depth test before, because one good way just to set or to know what percentage to give for each of your segments is just to run a discount depth test. So when you run your discount depth test, after you're done with the test and you're analyzing your data, look at which segments responded best for each discount levels. So maybe you'll notice that, hey, okay, control 25%, that was best for all first-time customers. Variant 1 at 20%, turns out email existing customers converted as well at 20% than they did at 25%. So that will give you a bit of a clue as to how to create a personalized offer for that segment, and so on. So hope that makes sense. Now, those are offer specific tests that you can run, right? Discount depth test, discount versus gift, tiered offers, and segmented offers tests. But something you don't want to neglect before Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and this is, I guess, maybe something you're a bit more familiar with. Most brands are already doing this, but this is landing page testing, right? So let's say Black Friday, Cyber Monday means that you're going to go heavy on paid ads. Well, let's look at, okay, well, are we better to send people to the homepage, to the collection page, to a landing page, or to product pages, right? Get clear on what is the best page to send your traffic to. Now, something very important, and this is something very few brands do religiously, is go in your test report and segment your results by traffic sources. You may notice that your paid ads, right, convert best when sent to collection pages, or specific campaigns within your paid ads convert best with collections, versus other campaigns perform best when traffic is sent to a specific landing page. Maybe you'll notice that meta ads perform best on the collection page versus Google ads perform best when sent to the homepage, right? So this is a level of granularity that you really want to get clear on ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because this can make a huge difference when it comes to your BFCM performance. Now, if you've already locked in a couple landing pages and you know that landing pages are performing better, well, I guess this is a bit of a no-brainer, but also test different landing pages. Is it better to send people to a listicle? Is it better to send people to a hero style landing page, right? So make sure you get clear on what or where to send your traffic based on your different types of campaigns that you will be running during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So very, very important. Now, another type of test that you can run is a shipping threshold test. Now, this is something that you can run all year, and I highly recommend doing it, at any given time. And you don't need to run this during a sales period either. But it's really good to get clarity on this ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And of course, it depends what your offers are going to be. But what you can do here, for example, is split your traffic and have control, which is free shipping at your current AOV, which is going to be easy to hit. Most people will qualify, but you may be leaving money on the table because let's say then you run a test where you have a free shipping offer that's slightly above the AOV. Well, that forces people to stretch a bit more, to add a bit more to their cart because, customers are not always super logic, right? They prefer to spend an extra $15 to spend instead of spending $5 on shipping. So this can be quite beneficial, but you want to test it. What's the impact, of course, on conversion rate? But again, what's the impact on your profit per visitor? And finally, then test a variant where you have a big stretch, right? Free shipping is way above your AOV. Now, this only makes sense, again, if you have add-on products that make sense and if customers don't have to add 5 more products to their carts in order to reach the free shipping threshold. So just like earlier, you'll want to run simulations where, okay, let's say your conversion rate here at just free shipping at your AOV is 3.2%. Well, factor in your shipping costs, factor in, the conversion rate, and what's your profit per visitor. Same thing with variant 1 and variant 2, and optimize for the best profit per visitor. In this case, having a free shipping threshold slightly above control gave us a better profit per visitor because it led to a higher average order value without hurting conversion rate too much. So this is something that you may want to optimize for. Now, it also depends on your brand's goals, right? Like if you're in hyper growth mode and the total amount of customers to you right now is more important than your profit, which can happen. In this case, well, okay, maybe you want to focus on just total conversion rate and the total amount of customers gained. But for the majority of brands that really care about profit, well, you'll want to optimize for profit per visitor. Now, just like I explained earlier here, make sure that your shipping thresholds are set based on your product architecture. So if your hero product is about $89 and you set free shipping at $100, well, then everybody has to find an $11 add-on. But if you don't have any products that's around that price point and your next cheapest product is $50, that might be too big of a gap. And now you've created friction instead of opportunity. So keep in mind that the gap must remain easily achievable, and you must have a product assortment that allows people to easily reach each thresholds. Finally, the last type of test to run ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday is bundle testing, right? One thing, and this can be with a discount or without a discount. We've actually run a lot of tests with Dr Squatch, for example, where we offered bundles without actually giving a discount. And it performed pretty much as well as when you offered a discount. And that is part of our case study on our website. What we found out across the past 10 years was that sometimes customers just don't really know what they want to buy. They want a bit of guidance, or people like buying things that are meant to work together, discount or without. So it's a good idea to really think of those products that can be paired together and, test them on your website. So just a couple ideas for bundles and how to create those bundles. What you could do is just look at your best-selling product and pair it with a complementary product. That just naturally makes sense, right? So a shampoo plus a conditioner makes sense. You may also want to look at a popular product, but then look at your Shopify data and look at what's the product that's most often bought in a second purchase, right? So when a customer buys this product and they usually come back, what do they buy that isn't this popular product again, right? So here it might be a natural pair. And if they buy it within the same purchase, you'll get better margins because you won't have to do fulfillment twice. Now, you could also look at what's a popular product that people buy, and then you could also look at what's a product that may not be as popular, but that really gets people to come back, right? A product that either leads to high customer retention rates, high LTV, or just leads to customers coming back. So a recurring customer rate is high due to this product, right? What this can do is you use your popular product as a gateway, but you use your secondary products as a way to make sure people will come back in the future and purchase again and again and again. Now, something else to look for is potentially a variety pack, right? So if you have multiple flavors, multiple scents, right? Well, you can often be faced with analysis paralysis. And to reduce that, well, just offer variety pack. A starter set that fits your product narrative, the routines you're kind of selling and promoting, or just products bought together most frequently. Those are all great ideas for bundles that you can build and test and potentially, then deploy during Black Friday, Cyber Monday as a way to increase your AOV and even your profit per visitor. So those are all the types of tests that we recommend testing ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday to help you get ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Now, those are tests that sure you can run pretty much any point in the year, and some are more suitable for sales than others, but this is how the best brands do it. Now, if you want full access to this document where you can just go through all the test ideas I explained and their simulation, make sure to just click the link in the description below and you'll be able to access this and go through all those tests on your own time. All right, so let's talk about what to do during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Black Friday, and what not to do. Because here's what you need to understand first. BFCM is primarily execution time, right? It's not the best time for experimentation. But I'm also realistic, and I know that many of you will test. And, we even test things for our clients during that time. But the key is really knowing what's worth testing and what to completely avoid testing during that time. Because during most of the year, we test with the aim of learning more about users and what really resonates with them. But you know what? no learnings are worth potentially messing up Black Friday, Cyber Monday, right? So you don't want to test highly risky things. You have to be a lot more strategic. Now, there are a couple things that are just honestly not worth testing during Black Friday, Cyber Monday at all. All right, let's talk about what to do during Black Friday, Monday. All right, now let's talk about what to do during BFCM. Because here's what you need to understand, right? BFCM is primarily execution time. It's not the best time for experimentation. But we also need to be realistic. Some of you will test, and we also test things for our clients. But the key is really knowing what's worth testing and what's absolutely not. Because most of the year, we test with the aim of learning more about our users and what resonates with them. But that's not really something that we can do during BFCM because traffic, behaviors, and customers are quite atypical. And, high risk tests are not worth doing during Black Friday, Cyber Monday because you don't want to mess up that time period. So you have to be very, very strategic. Let's actually look quickly here what not to test during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. That's probably the best place to start. So during BFCM, do not test copy and messaging angles. Now, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, right, keep in mind that people are shopping because of price. They're shopping because of the discounts. So clever headlines, copy, of course, copy has an impact, right? If your customers aren't familiar with your products and they have questions, there's a lack of clarity, that creates friction and you're hurting, your potential to have a great BFCM. But different angles for copy, testing different tones, and just really going hard on the different copy and messaging tests is likely not worth it. Because again, people here are not reading copy as much as they're reading discount percentages. So what you think might be a learning during BFCM when it comes to copy may not apply or work at all outside of that time period. So I would say resist testing copy and messaging angles during that time. I also recommend avoiding major UX overhauls, right? Because your customers have potentially been browsing your website for weeks, waiting for the sale. They're familiar with how to get to your products, with your navigation, with where they can find things. So we don't want to break their muscle memory or break what they're familiar with right when they're ready to buy. So save major UX overhauls for after BFCM or way before. Now, that's very, very important. Also, don't make, high or super risky tests during that period or really big tests that could increase load time. Because again, you don't want to increase load time or potentially break something during that period. Now, personalization is something you also want to be careful with. I've noticed over the years that a lot of brands think of personalization as something that potentially automatically gives them a better conversion rate. But that's very, very far from the truth, right? Personalization doesn't work better just because it's called personalization. It's really just like any other site features. If it's untested, don't deploy it. I've seen some personalization do worse than something that's not personalized. So if you want to deploy personalization, make sure it was tested ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and that you know that this personalization works better than when it's not personalized. Now, there's other types of personalization, which is personalizations that are trained on normal shopping behavior, right? I'm talking about merchandising tools. And keep in mind that those potentially may fail during BFCM because they're trained based on your typical customer behaviors outside of a sale period. But what happens during a sale is people may want to buy different products. They may have different motivations, right? So that machine learning type of personalization, be careful with it during BFCM because it may not perform as well during than outside of that period. I would also recommend avoiding new platforms or tools because look, if you're about to do 30% of your annual revenue in 4 days, it's not the time to discover that your new tool will crash under heavy traffic. You don't know what could happen when a tool is being deployed and you're unfamiliar with it. So make sure you're very, very comfortable with your tech stack as you're heading into that sales period. Now, there are a couple of things that you could test with caution, right? So pricing strategy. So some of the things that I've talked about earlier, your shipping thresholds, your gift with purchase, low risk UX, right? If you know that there's something that creates friction and you want to test it, you could test that. But again, test with caution and you have to set yourself thresholds. So for example, if you're seeing during Black Friday, Cyber Monday that you have a test that's potentially losing, don't wait to reach statistical significance on that. Just shut that test off sooner than later because you really want to maximize performance. I do have here a bit of a chart, which is, should I test this during Black Friday, Cyber Monday? Couple questions you can ask yourself, right? First one is, can I reverse this in under 5 minutes? If you can't, just don't bother testing it. If you can, ask yourself, have I tested similar things before, right? If yes, well then potentially moving forward. If no, well then, probably best not to test it because at the end of the day, if it's something completely radical, something you don't know how it might behave, maybe best to save after Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Now, you also want to ask yourself, is the potential upside of this test bigger than the risk? If the potential upside is bigger than the risk, consider testing it. But if not, again, just don't bother testing it. You also need to think about what happens if it breaks, right? Because look, we're looking at technology and it's possible that a test breaks, especially during that time period. So what happens if it breaks? Does it just break one little thing or will it break all the buttons on your website? Right? Consider those things. If it has a potential to have a cascading effect, then don't test it. But if it really impacts one small element and it's really not a big deal, well, maybe then you can proceed. But ask yourself the most important question, which is, do I have someone watching this? Do we have a monitoring process? Can we accurately monitor this test's performance? If you don't have that, then don't test. But if you do have that and you're able to quickly shut off that test in case of something wrong happening, well, then you should be okay to test. So this is the framework we use here at SplitBase to determine whether we can or cannot test something during a sale and specifically BFCM. So I think that's pretty simple. During BFCM, focus on execution, focus on what focus on what is solid. It's not the time for risk taking, but focus on optimizing the existing experience. Now, let's talk about what to do after BFCM, because this is where you may have a gold mine that is, for a lot of brands, staying untouched and ignored. All right, so now Black Friday, Cyber Monday ends. You've got thousands and thousands of transactions, tons of data. And then what happens? Well, most brands just ignore it and move on, and then they just go back to their regular old playbook. But here's the deal. The real opportunity isn't just Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's also what happens after, right? At SplitBase, what we do is a bit of a postmortem, and not the one you're thinking of. It's just, sure, we look at what worked and what didn't work, what surprised us. But the real gold mine is all those new customers you just acquired. So think about this. You probably just got more new customers in 4 or 5 days a week than you normally get in a month, or maybe even in 2 months. So here's the problem though. They converted at a discount. You made less profit on them than usual. So if they only buy once, not ideal. The math isn't great, especially with higher ad cost, free shippings. Your margins may not be at their best, which means now is the time to aim for that second purchase. So here's how to convert one-time buyers into real customers after Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Now, what you're going to do is actually pretty simple. You want to look at one, how can I convert existing customers into subscribers? Two, how can I get customers to come back? Or three, how can I get customers to buy from a different product category to potentially move them into new product lines and increase their lifetime value? Right? So let's just dive into this. First, I would say you want to look at the 3Ps methodology. This is our methodology for optimization. And essentially, what it states is that you always want to identify and look at the patterns that leads to conversion and abandonment before actually going into testing or making any changes to your website, right? So you need to understand what happened. What did people buy? What are people looking for? What were your best sellers? What led to the highest lifetime value? So you want to look at the patterns, right? You want to look at what caused people to buy, what did people buy, what products were you most profitable on, or maybe what were the products that got ignored. Once you've got those patterns, right, then you can go into this and you'll have a much clearer idea of, well, ultimately, what is possible. All right, so now you're looking at your data and look at your best sellers, but also look for their complementary products. So someone bought a skincare cleanser. What moisturizer goes with it? What's the natural next product? If somebody bought running shoes, what socks do they need? What accessories? What are the logical add-ons that potentially they didn't see or didn't add on? This is complementary product analysis, and it's gold because especially if you're on Shopify, you can use Sidekick to help you understand this. Try to understand what's the second product new customers generally buy after buying a specific product, and then look at who bought that specific product and see how you can potentially promote that add-on product. So a couple different strategies. First, the second purchase strategy, right? This is what most brands do wrong. They wait, they throw Black Friday buyers into their regular email flows and hope for the best. But every day that passes, customers start to forget about you a little bit more and a little bit more. So January and February and even December, those are core time windows to gain customers back. So again, what you want to do is, let's say you've got customers that bought once at 40% off. Would they maybe subscribe at 20% off? So you can test your subscription offers and you can really try to push subscription offers to people who bought during BFCM. Now, you can also run some bundle tests, which we talked about earlier, right? If they bought one product, what bundle would make sense for them to buy next? Is there a grouping of products that would add value to what they just bought? So you'll want to test that. And then again, what would get people to, if they bought from category A, what would get them to buy into category B and expand their relationship with your brand? So you'll want to test that. But this is not just something to test via emails. Those are things to test on site as well. You can even use different cookies in order to target the right people. The possibilities here are pretty endless. And that's how you do optimization after BFCM. Right? Customers are coming back. Maybe you show them slightly different offers based on if they bought. If they bought a barbecue from you, maybe the second time that they come on your site, you'll want to mostly show barbecue accessories, not barbecues again, because they've already got one. So that's how you can maximize BFCM before, during, and after that period. All right, now let's say you ran a lot of tests, potentially ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, maybe during, maybe after. This is also great data because whatever you ran during some sales also represent atypical customer behaviors and behaviors of customers that tends to happen during a sale. So use that for every sale next year, right? So if you tested gift with purchase and found that product X motivated more than product Y, well, use that insight and build upon it. Maybe you tested different landing pages and found that collection pages converted better than the homepage. Apply that learning moving forward. The biggest waste when it comes to conversion optimization is running a test and not building on the learnings. You need to stack the learnings just like pancakes And that way you're making sure that you're not starting from scratch every single time. So the real ROI of Black Friday isn't just during that spike in revenue. It also comes when you're acquiring new customers and then you can convert them over time. And you're maximizing the value of those customers. So after you've got that, you need to keep testing because your current website is just your current baseline and it can always get better. So in Q1, test aggressively. Focus on getting that second purchase from people who bought from you before. Now, maybe some people discovered you during BFCM but didn't buy. You still have an opportunity after BFCM to convert them. So it's really important that you don't just test before and during, but also after and for the rest of the year, because your website can always get better and you can always squeeze more profit out of your existing website. And ads are likely not going to get cheaper. So testing continuously is one way you can continuously fight against those rising costs and make sure that your brand performs better month over month. And that is exactly what we do here at SplitBase, right? We don't just optimize for that one sale, we optimize for the business for the entire year. So with that said, now, depending on when you're watching this video, you've got a couple weeks before Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And you can either run the same playbook as last year, or you can test strategically now. Now, everything I've covered today, it's in this FigJam document that you can access through the link in the description below. And that can be your BFCM CRO strategy blueprint. It's everything from this video in an easy to follow format, everything you've seen on screen. It's all there. So click the link below. And of course, before you go, if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more conversion optimization strategy content going forward. I'm Raphael from SplitBase, and I hope you'll have your best BFCM yet.